It's you. Oh, no. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I just came from down the road. Never mind.
Friday there.
Hi.
I'll just sit over here.
Yeah, we got a couple things.
No problem.
Wherever you can find out.
Okay. This folder.
Oh, yeah, this is great. Yeah, that's it.
I didn't get it.
You gotta get it. At this moment, I'm sure tomorrow.
Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Dangler?
Here.
Mr. Vieira?
Here.
Dr. Vogt? Here. Dr. Sally?
Here.
Mrs. Wittes?
Here.
And I hereby certify that this meeting has been published in the newspapers in accordance with the Open Public Meetings and posted as required by law.
Thank you. Our first presentation is going to be the Municipal Alliance Committee. Andrea Zapsik is forward.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrea Zapsik. I work for RWJ Barnabas Health Institute for Prevention and Recovery. My team and I, through a grant that we have through the state.
Will you speak into the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. My team and I, through a grant that we have through the state, are leading a process in Long Branch called Communities That Care, which is a data-driven, community-based process to help the community identify the risk factors that contribute to future youth problem behavior in the area of substance abuse, delinquency, teen pregnancy, dropout rate, etc. Been working with the Mayor's Task Force, and so that process is ongoing. You will be receiving an invitation very shortly. Mayor, thank you for your emails today, confirming the date of May 7th for our key leader orientation. But through this process, what my agency also brings to the table is at no charge technical assistance to the city if you would like to apply for other grant funding. So it came to our attention that Long Branch does not currently have an operating municipal alliance. I don't know what the history is. I actually live in Ocean County. Kendall and Claire, who are actually the leads on the Communities That Care project, have been attending the Monmouth County Municipal Alliance meetings and have brought back some information to share with all of you if you are interested in starting up or restarting, if you had one at one time, a Municipal Alliance committee. So the Alliance grants are, they originated at the state. That fund is populated, it's called the Drug Enforcement Demand Reduction Fund, and it's populated by, it's not taxpayer dollars, it's actually fines and liquidated assets from drug deals and criminal proceeds. And it goes into a big pot of money in the state, and then it's divvied out to the counties based on a funding formula, and then they divvy it out to municipalities that are interested based on a similar funding formula. So the grants run on anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 year cycles, depending on what the Governor's Council, that's the funding organization, the Governor's Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, whatever they decide. We're currently halfway through year 5, and they just made a decision to extend an extra year because some of the processes are changing. So the current cycle will end in June 30th of 2020. So the Monmouth County coordinator, Joanne Shu, has told me that there was an alliance in Monmouth County that pulled out, and so as a result, there's about $10,000 in available funding if Long Branch would be interested in applying, and that would be for the period from January 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2020. Typically if you're going to do that during that process, we'll be planning the grant for the future cycle, and that allocation would probably be more than $10,000, but they don't have their figures yet for what Long Branch would be eligible for. All we can really speak to is that $10,000. So I've been in touch with Councilwoman Vogt and Councilman Dangler, and I was invited here tonight to provide some information as to what that process would look like should you choose to go that route. So I'm going to pass these around. The Monmouth County sent a full application packet, and it's a lot of information, and I think if you opened it and looked at it, you'd probably run screaming from the room and say, no way is this going to be worth is $10,000 going to be worth our time? So it tends to look very daunting. But that is something, again, that my agency can help with. So I basically sort of cherry-picked the most pertinent.
Do you have one more?
Oh. We're good? Okay. So basically, from this, I cherry-picked the most pertinent information for this juncture. The first step would actually be to form the Alliance Committee, and it doesn't have to be called the Long Branch Municipal Alliance. It could be called whatever you wanted. That's appropriate, at least, anyway. And that is, since you'd be starting from scratch, the state recommends that you do that by ordinance. And the committee itself is designed to represent a broad cross-section of the community. So on the first page, you will see the slots that they ask you to choose someone from the community, and it can be more than one. Your membership is totally up to you. They're all public meetings in accordance with the Public Meetings Act, so even if someone isn't appointed but they just want to volunteer, everyone is welcome to the table. And you'll see from the first page carried on to the second, there's about 17 slots that they require. That the funder has determined represent a broad cross-section of the community. So typically, and actually I kind of got ahead of myself. The very, very first step, if you are interested, would be for the mayor to send a letter to Joanne Shu at the Health Department stating that Long Branch is interested in coming back into the program and applying for funding for January 1, 2020. And then at the same time, or subsequent to, you would put an ordinance together forming the committee and designating these positions, etc., rules and regulations, and then however you choose to appoint. Sometimes the mayor appoints, sometimes the council appoints, sometimes the membership is open as long as these sectors are represented. That is totally, how you put it together is totally up to you. I can tell you, I live in Brick Township, and we had a very high-functioning alliance for many years, and then it was disbanded we had a change of administration, it was disbanded, and then in 2014, we reformulated. So I'd be happy to provide a copy of our ordinance as a template. You don't have to follow that, but it's pretty comprehensive. But there's like I said, it's totally up to you how you want to form the membership, etc. As long as these sectors are represented, you will be eligible for the grant funding. This goes into a little bit about residency requirements. That has to do with the grant. They require that at least 50% of the Alliance membership are Long Branch residents. So you would set that in that ordinance. You'd also set your meeting schedule, and it can be as specific. It can, it can say the first Monday of the month, or it can say meets monthly at a schedule to be set by the chair. It's totally at your discretion. There's really not a lot of hard and fast rules as to how the Alliance is going to operate. And then the next page is just about the function of the Alliance. Again, this is stuff that you can include in your bylaws, in your ordinance if you want to get that specific. And then the last few pages have to do with actually applying for the grant funding. So the reason that we brought this to you at this point is that what we're doing with Communities That Care is very, very similar to what you would need to do to qualify for the funding. So one is almost going to automatically position you for the other. Whether you go that route or not is totally up to you. But we will be doing a data collection process. My staff and I met with the school superintendent a week before last. He's given approval for a student survey, which for Communities That Care is kind of the foundation of the data collection. But then you would look at other sources of data, police department data. One of the things that we're starting to look at in Ocean County is station house adjustments. Not all police departments do that, but it's a way of sort of off the record adjudicating youth matters so that the first time offenders don't end up with a record. And that's a very rich source of data. Of course, it's all confidential. We just get numbers. Hospital data, other school data. The schools are required to track disciplinary incidents and things like that. And then looking at that, you would decide who else in the community you would like to talk to, and form some focus groups or do some key informant interviews, and that tends to be more qualitative. We noticed in the data that this is going on in your school. Can you tell us a little bit about what you think the causes for that might be? And that all kind of gets put together where you identify a problem, and then the root causes, which are the contributing factors to the problem. And then this is probably the most important thing that sets the program apart, the local conditions. So the local conditions in Long Branch might not be the local conditions in Red Bank, that might not be the local conditions in Brick, where I live. They're exactly that, they're local conditions. So your problem is your problem, your root causes are the why, and the local conditions are why here and why now. And all of that gets supported with the data that's collected, and then that sort of determines what programs you're going to implement. The idea behind that is that if your programs are appropriately targeting the local conditions, they'll correct the local conditions, which will then take care of the root causes, which will then alleviate the problem.
We had an alliance here in the city many years ago,
Okay?
and that would be another position. Someone has to be the alliance coordinator, is that right?
A paid coordinator is not required.
It is not.
It is not. A chairman or chair is required.
Okay.
A paid coordinator is not required. I can tell you that my government career started in 1998. I was hired as the Alliance coordinator in Brick. I was a full-time coordinator, and I had a full-time staff. I was the only situation like that in the entire state. Most of the coordinators are very, very part-time, hourly or seasonal, if they're paid at all. Some people do take it on on a volunteer basis. Our coordinator now in Brick is actually paid as a consultant, so he only gets paid when he works, and that is included in the grant. You are allowed to allocate a certain percentage of the grant dollars to pay the coordinator. It's not expected that that would necessarily be a city hire. a
So if I
full-time
understand
position.
you correctly, the chairperson could serve as the coordinator.
That is correct.
Okay,
That is correct. So there is a match requirement on the grant, 25% in cash, 75% in kind. The cash can either be a contribution from the city, or it can be fundraised. In Brick, we fundraise for our match. Most recently, I worked in the city of Rahway, where I also was the director of recreation, but I also oversaw their municipal alliance. The city contributed the match in that instance. It's totally at your discretion. The 75% in kind are things that may already be going on and already. If you have a DARE program, those officers' salaries count towards the match. You're already paying that out. If you have a community policing division and you're doing a neighborhood watch program, those officers' salaries, if you write the neighborhood watch program into the grant, those officers' salaries can be used as match. So there's a lot of ways to do the match. If you were to set an alliance office up in your recreation department, the square footage contribution for that space by the city is considered an in-kind match. So it's not something that, the cash match, yes, that's cold hard cash, whether you fundraise for it or whether that's a line item in the city budget. The in-kind can be just about anything related to the program that the city is already spending.
Do you know what the consultants, just so we have a ballpark of how much typically in Brick, I know Brick's a lot larger than Long Branch, but what's the line item in the budget for that consultant or for the program there? Do you have any idea?
Our consultant is paid $35 an hour. He is a substance use professional, so he's fully credentialed. That's not necessarily required. A lot of times the coordinator is also the rec director, or someone in the recreation office, or someone in the police department. Ours is $35 an hour because he is a consultant and not an employee, so that additional money kind of offsets the, what he would have to basically cover his own taxes and other expenses. But that's totally at your
I mean,
discretion.
just typically, do you know what the annual cost of the program is in Brick?
It's zero cost because he's paid out of the grant.
No, I mean, so you're saying you just stay within that same
Correct.
framework?
Yep, we fundraise for the match, and so we basically operate, we get $39,523 in Brick. Our match is a little under $10,000, which we fundraise for, and that's it.
But when we had it years ago, didn't you have a full-time employee with
Yeah.
that? Or
yeah,
not?
that was the problem. And she left and we couldn't find a qualified person. So that would be my next question. What are the qualifications for the person who might be the chairperson, not the alliance coordinator?
I'm
Are
sorry,
there
say
any
that again, so
specific-
for the chair,
Yes,
the chair is a volunteer from the committee.
okay,
And the requirements for the coordinator are whatever you put in your ordinance.
okay,
So, as I said, typically, so I started out as a full-time coordinator. I eventually moved into the recreation department, where I continued to supervise the alliance. That was in Brick. I left Brick in 2009. I went to the city of Rahway as the rec director, and they looked at my resume and went, "Oh, municipal alliance, well, you can do that too." Because typically what happens in local government, and I'm not making any assumptions, but I see it over and over again, when you don't know what to do with something, you put it in the rec department, because your rec people get it done. And that's very, very common among recreation directors. Dawn Thompson in Neptune is also the Municipal Alliance Coordinator. Ralph Bernardo and Clark, those are two that I know right off the top of my head, because I just saw them a couple weeks ago at the rec conference. But that's very typical. A lot of times it's someone in the police department. What you can't do is supplant part of a full-time salary with the alliance money. So say you have a full-time DARE officer and he's being paid, say, $50,000 a year, you can't say, well, we're now gonna take $5,000 of the alliance money and to offset his salary. So they consider that supplanting.
okay.
So, but you could, if you have a seasonal worker, a part-time person in the recreation department, that's totally allowable.
So was that person maybe a full-time city employee and
Yeah.
part of their job duties was
Yeah,
doing this municipal land?
that.
So when you handled the program as the recreation director, you couldn't charge part of your salary against the grant? is
Correct,
that what-
that's correct, or any of my full-time staff. But they could be paid additional hourly or paid a stipend to be the coordinator.
How many alliances are there statewide, do you know?
At one time, there were, we have 565 municipalities, there were about 510. I don't know if that's still the case or not, I'm kind of going way back on that
Do
number.
any municipality join forces together in one alliance, or they're all independent?
It's very, very frequently that happens, especially because we have a lot of small municipalities in New Jersey. So there had been at one time a Coastal Monmouth Alliance, and I'm not sure if Long Branch was part of that alliance but I think it was maybe Long Branch, Asbury, Bradley Beach. I'm stretching.
West Long Branch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, so it tends to be common with smaller towns. And I don't know that, I'm gonna send this around. This is actually the summary of what's in this packet, which I'm going to leave with Kathy. On the bottom of that is my contact information and also Joanne Shu from the Health Department. And she would be able to give you an idea if there's other alliances, other towns nearby that are looking to take on an additional partner, if you wanted to consider that as well.
So just an idea of the kinds of programs that have been funded through this. And I know, like you said, it changes in terms of the conditions of.
Correct.
Yeah, but just an idea.
Well, I've seen it all over the years. So back in the day, this program funded a lot of what was called alternative activities, which was like basketball leagues and dances and movies and that kind of thing. And over time, and I'm talking about the 20 years that I've been involved with it, I've seen things change a lot. Everything now with any funding, whether it's this funding or Drug Free Communities funding or what have you, it's all evidence-based. Show me the money, show me the data. They want to see that you're moving the needle and that you're selecting programs or interventions that actually have some evidence base to them. So while there is a lot of merit in providing healthy alternative activities for young people as a standalone program, it really doesn't show any long-term efficacy for preventing youth from engaging in risky behaviors. Short-term, absolutely. Long-term, not so much. So there's curriculum-based programs that are eligible to be funded. Some of those off-the-shelf ones are pretty expensive. What they will no longer fund is one-shot deals, one-day assemblies, one day, bring in a speaker, etc. They're looking for something that's gotten it. Now, what you can do is connect that to a broader program. So say for it, and it's very odd because in this current cycle, they were very particular about, that's when they cut out all the assemblies and the one-day programs, etc. But they left one thing in, which was National Red Ribbon Month, which is October. But if you were going to spend money on Red Ribbon activities, you had to show that it was more than one day. It had to be part of a continuum of other programs, and then you could fund that assembly program, as long as there were other things kind of in a roll-up to it. The one major change with this funding cycle was that they put an emphasis on what's called environmental strategies. So on the very last page of the first thing that I handed out, the Community Anti-Drug Coalition of America is kind of our nationwide clearinghouse. They provide technical assistance, they provide training, they provide educational materials. Basically, they help community-based coalitions to function more effectively. So they came up with what they call their 7 strategies for community-level change. The top 3 are where prevention lived in the early part of my career. Raising awareness, getting information out, providing support through skill building programs, etc. The bottom 4 are when you change things, and this is why they call them environmental strategies, when you change things about the physical environment, where you create a barrier, where you change where you modify a policy, where you add a consequence. Those are actually the things that have been shown to provide, to bring long-term results. So the way I kind of talk about it, imagine that you're sitting on the bank of a river, it's not cold outside, it's nice, you're sitting on the fishing pier, and it's a nice warm day, and you've got some tunes on the radio, and you've got your pole in the water, and all of a sudden there's a child in the water and he's drowning. And because you're all citizens that, you know, or care about your community, you jump in and you pull him out. And then 15 minutes later it happens again, and then it happens again, and then it happens again. After a while, you're going to pack up your gear and you're going to walk upstream, and what you might find is that there's a basketball court built right on the edge of the riverbank. And as the kids are missing shots and rebounds, those balls are going astray and they're chasing them and they're going into the water. So back in the early days, what could we do about that? Well, we could raise awareness, we could send out flyers to all the parents in the neighborhood, we could have the rec department come in and do skills and drills so that the kids become better shots and better rebounders. We could put a paid site supervisor out there to basically monitor to make sure that nobody goes in the water. But that's not sustainable long term, and it only impacts those children that are there now, not the ones that are going to move into the neighborhood next week. And how about we build a fence around the basketball court? We've created a barrier. And then maybe you all pass an ordinance that says, in the city of Long Branch, we're never going to build another basketball court on the banks of the river. And that's where your long-term change happens. So what those activities look like, in Brick, I can tell you we started a neighborhood watch program that's been very, very successful. We started it particularly because we had one high-density multifamily complex that was a hotspot for police calls, drug activity, all kinds of stuff. You know, tip of the iceberg on gang violence. And so we started a neighborhood watch in that community. Our police department restarted the community policing division, so we have bike patrols in there in the summertime. Part of it was that we had refurbished a park right near there, and there were a lot of resident complaints about why are you putting money into this park, because if they burned it down twice, they're only going to burn it down again. But what we actually succeeded in doing is changing the culture in that whole neighborhood. So now the neighbors watch the park, and the kids that are coming through the woods are coming there to play basketball and then go back home and not making so much trouble. So we branched it out to other areas. We had a condo association that was having some problems. They're right near the Parkway exit. So what was happening is it was a quick getaway. It's a small association, only about 200 residents. Every single home has a neighborhood watch sign on their lawn. You know the crime has dropped to 0. What's happened is it's moved down the street to the next condo association, so we need to get them on board as well. But you wouldn't think that a sign would be a big deal, but it is, because it sends a sign that we're watching you and we're not going to tolerate any shenanigans in this neighborhood. In terms of direct substance use, the prescription drop boxes. Do you have a dedicated prescription drop box for unused medication?
Jason's shaking his head.
We do.
We do? Okay. So that program, can I ask you when you got yours?
About a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that.
So those have been rolled out through, I believe, through DCA, and I think they give out about 4 a year. I know that, but you would be eligible, say you didn't have one and you wanted one, and DCA says, well, you're going to have to get on the waiting list, but you want one now, you would be able to use your Alliance money for that. It's an environmental strategy, because then you get the word out to people, clean out your medicine cabinet, and dispose of your unused drugs. We also have a realtor program. We work with local realtors because it was brought, during our data collection process, it was brought to our attention that folks suffering from substance use disorder will frequently look for the open houses for the purpose of sort of cleaning out people's medicine cabinets. So we have, as a matter of fact, I'm meeting with the realtor tomorrow, the guy from the State Association tomorrow, to see how we can kind of partner with them on getting the word out a little bit more effectively. So those are the things that create barriers.
I'm curious about the $10,000. Is that county dollars or federal dollars?
Neither. It's from the state, comes from the state to the county, and that's that fund that I talked about at the beginning, the Drug Enforcement Demand Reduction Fund. So that when there's criminal activity around drug use or drug selling, that money, the fines that are paid, go into this pot at the state, and then once a year, they filter it down to the counties to be given out to the municipalities. So the county administers it, your relationship is going to be with the county,
Okay.
but it's not county dollars. That actually funnels to them from the
Well, the
state.
reason I asked that is because of the possibility of them cutting the money.
So it's not part of the state budget. It's actually, do you all have any trust funds here? So do you run your rec fees through a trust fund, usually dedicated by rider? Okay, usually when that happens, those funds are dedicated for that purpose. That's what the DETR fund is, the Drug Enforcement Demand Reduction, is it's not part of the state budget. And actually there have been a couple of governors have kind of tried to kind of filter that into the state budget, and it's usually been shut down, so.
It's generated by fees paid, the municipal court.
Yeah, I'd
Yep.
like to have more information and get with a smaller circle before we make a decision.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And again, my contact information is on the bottom if you want some more information. Either me or Joanne Chu will be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And next presentation from Monmouth County SPCA.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Sid Johnson from the Long Branch Health Department, Chief LaCitra from Monmouth County SPCA. So we're here tonight. The chief will explain the program. He has a grant, but he came to Debbie Nagel and myself to explain it. We thought it would be of some value, or maybe of value to some of our residents. Long Branch is the first town he's going to try this program in. And the other thing is, it's very similar to the TNR we do with the cats, basically to SPCA, because it's their grant and everything would do the majority of the work, and we're just asked to promote it and assist him, and he's going to give us information so we could license the dogs that he takes care of and so forth. So I'll let Mr. LaCitra, Chief LaCitra, talk about it.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council, for seeing me here tonight. So as you know, the mission of the Monmouth County SPCA, one of our main missions, is to promote responsible pet ownership by the prevention of overbreeding. You know, the city of Long Branch has been a great partner in the TNR program in addressing the community cats, in getting them neutered and really trying to bring this under control. Quite frankly, you've been really the leader in the county when it comes to this, as far as number goes on that end. One of the other issues that has been an issue throughout the county and really throughout the nation is the overbreeding of the bully population of dogs, the pit bull population. And you know, we have really paid attention to this and try our best to educate the public in trying to promote responsible pet ownership in allowing or having the owners bring them in to get them spayed and neutered. So in an effort to do so, we secured a grant with the help of the Little Silver Animal Foundation, in regards to enticing residents to come into the Monmouth County SPCA and get their bully breed or mixed bully breed neutered. So the program is going to work like this. We are basically going to offer a $100 stipend to each resident that comes into the Monmouth County SPCA and gets their pit bull or pit bull mix neutered. In doing so, we'll also do the surgery at no cost to them. In doing so, of course, we will not only, neuter the animal, vaccinate it, microchip the animal, but also maintain a list of all residents that aren't licensed and provide that list to the city, so the city can in turn approach those people for licensing with those dogs, and we'll make that very, very clear to the people that are coming in. In addition to that, we will offer another $100 stipend to each resident to come back to the shelter, to our veterinary center, veterinary clinic, to have the animal rechecked to promote, again, responsible pet ownership and making sure that they're maintaining the health of the animal. The cost to the city is zero. What I'm asking the city to is to become a partner with the Monmouth County SPCA. We needed to identify one city that we wanted to do this, and because of the success of our TNR program in the city of Long Branch, we wanted to do Long Branch first in the county. It would be a 6-month program that we would start. And, you know, to get this information out to the public, what I'm asking for the city is to help us promote the program. We'll print out the flyers, we'll give out all the information. We're asking the city to promote this in your newsletter, on your website, and also with the addition of the help of your animal control officers, give them a bunch of pamphlets that they, while they're out doing their normal course of duty, to pass this off to the public and to hopefully get them in and get the program going. That's basically it in a nutshell. So it's a grant-based program. We'll go as long as we can until the funds run out, and then hopefully be able to secure another grant to continue the program going forward.
It sounds
Yeah.
good.
Sounds great.
Yeah,
Sounds positive, it's very positive idea.
It's a great program. It'll work well. We'll control it all. Of course, we'll stay in constant contact with Sid and your animal control people to make certain that you know, that they're in line with everything that's going on. You know, if we do have a resident in town that has no means of transportation, the county is more than willing to go out and help transport them in with our animal control vans. In a rare occasion that maybe we are unable to, if we're untied up, we may ask maybe the city to help with their animal control officer to help transport one of the animals to the town shelter. But I really don't see that really being much of an issue. We have a pretty large animal control team that's pretty much available. You know, we have full-time shifts that are on the road.
And that's only just for dogs that are pit bulls or bully dogs?
That's correct.
That's it?
They have to be a pit bull or a pit bull mix, not a collie, not a poodle, or anything else like that. It's got to be a pit bull
What
mix.
about the Rottweilers, do they consider that, or for the German Shepherds?
No, not a German Shepherd. It's got to be a bully breed mix. The name of the program is called the Pit Stop.
Okay.
And we're going to advertise it as so. And again, it's designed to bring responsible pet ownership to people and really try to knock down the overbreeding of the bully breed. Because unfortunately, not only is it very, very problematic for the city and animal control and also overpopulation in the shelter, it's truly unfair for the animals that are being overbred and not being properly cared for.
Sounds wonderful,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's no bad that could come out of it.
Yeah, it's
So,
like, why
for sure.
wouldn't we, yeah.
So that's
Right.
good. I appreciate your help.
Chief, if you can share, what was the grant? How much was it?
$20,000 grant. So we figure with the cost of the surgery and with the $100 stipend, that we can at least knock out close to 60 surgeries within town. So we're hoping, listen, it may fill in very quickly, we don't know. But and we're gonna schedule them through the, you know, regular 5-day a week. If the, you know, the people call up, they make their appointment, they come in, they get it. And again, you know, the important part too is we have to establish that they're Long Branch residents. So they can either do that by providing us with a driver's license or with a bill or something that shows that they are a resident in town, or best yet, a licensing that the dog is licensed in town. But if they're not licensed, we're gonna make certain that you as a city gets that information so you can go after them and make certain that those animals are licensed.
Great, that sounds good.
Okay?
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next item is the Atlantic Avenue Park, Eric Nathanson and Tom Knapp.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Eric Nathanson, T&M Associates. This is my colleague, Tom F., also of T&M Associates. This is Chris Pack. Some time ago, T&M Associates was approached by the Monmouth Junior Rowing Center, and the Monmouth Junior Rowing Center representatives are here. This is Mr. Scott Belford and Mr. Dan Johnson, and these gentlemen asked us to facilitate a meeting with the Mayor and Council tonight so that they could present the overall function of the program, and they've identified Pleasure Bay Park as a candidate site. So they do have about a 15-minute presentation, 10-15 minutes, and then we can open up to questions and answers thereafter. So do you have a thumb drive or something that you need?
It's on a laptop, so I've got an HDMI that I could possibly connect to.
Could we utilize the smart board so you guys could?
The visual really helps with it.
Hmm?
You know, you do it then?
Sure.
Yeah, well, why don't,
Well, yeah.
so, while I guess he does that,
My name is Chris Packman from Denton Falls. This program is developed by Scott Belford. He's the director of Monmouth Rowing Center. And then this idea came up a while back. Currently the head coach for Christian Brothers Academy, CBA, at the crew level. We also have Dan, who's one of the board of directors on the Junior Monmouth Center, and so is I. And we have, where's Brendan Ford? Okay, Brendan Ford, which is, he's one of the assistant directors. So I appreciate the council, mayor, and the professionals to taking the time to listen to us, because we felt that we were looking at all these different locations, and we found out, you know, we identified a park in Long Branch that's been underutilized. So we kind of want to come here and just make a presentation and see, you know, if you guys are up for viability of making the community a little bit better.
If we don't have slides, I've given this presentation a million times in my mind. I've been part of the sport of rowing for 25 years. I coached collegiately at Princeton, at University of Pennsylvania, at William & Mary, coached the United States Junior National Team at multiple world championships. And for the last 15 years, I've been building a program at Christian Brothers Academy that started with 8 kids and 2 rented boats and is now 60 some odd kids a year with cuts at tryouts, and we own $500,000 worth of equipment. And the one issue that I found repeatedly, I'm a Monmouth County resident almost my whole life, is there's no public access to the water for the sport of rowing. The only dedicated rowing dock in Monmouth or Ocean County is owned by the borough of Rumsden in Victory Park, and no one who's not a resident is allowed on it. So we have this fantastic sport that has these boats that are unfortunately so large that if you're going to participate in the sport, they have to stay on site. It takes a vehicle that's the size of an 18-wheeler to move them. So what we were proposing, we row on this piece of Branchport Creek daily. It's one of the most suitable bodies of water for the sport of rowing that I've encountered in my 25 years in the sport. It's one of the best places in New Jersey for the sport. What we were proposing on the site of an underutilized baseball field, which quite frankly, I looked up the Long Branch Little League site today. I couldn't believe there were a list of 19 parks where baseball is offered. There's no reason, in my opinion, to have a baseball field waterfront when you can offer activities that rely on the water in that space. So what we were proposing as Monmouth Rowing Center was access to the triangular piece. Actually, I'll walk us in sorry. Oh, perfect. Yeah, actually, we can. Tom has some. You guys can get a sense of the piece, just the small piece of the property that we're looking at. No problem. No problem. It's all right. I can. Actually, you three have already seen exactly what we're. So what we're essentially proposing is access to this triangular piece of the property right here. A small piece of which we would fence off just about that size, and the dimensions are all on the presentation that's obviously not coming up, and fence it off in order to keep equipment in and safe. You can't trot $500,000 worth of equipment out and leave it on racks unfenced. This entire piece of the property would then be gravel with a small area for people to come up and drop off canoes, kayaks, whatever stand-up paddleboards, whatever man-powered craft they happen to want to use, and there would be a primary public dock right here, a T-shaped dock that would allow anyone who wants to come up and launch, if you have a rowing shell, if you have a canoe, stand-up paddleboard, kayak, and then this small area over here would be fenced off with a second dock that's meant only to keep these safety launches, the boats that go out and escort the kids when they're on the water, so that if someone ends up in the water, there's rescue capacity there and whatnot. The safety launches are very vulnerable to vandalism. It's one of the only issues that we have in the sport is you have to keep safety launches because they have 20-horse engines on them, they have gas tanks in them. We couldn't possibly put those on the dock that's open to the public because there's no way to secure them. So what we were proposing was a second dock available only through the inside of that fenced-in enclosure that's keeping the rowing equipment just for the safety launches. But the primary dock, the large piece of this entire project, would be available to anyone who wanted to launch any sort of man-powered craft, because quite frankly, there's really nowhere in the area to do it. The only public access that I'm aware of, I'm a Red Bank resident, the only public access I'm aware of is is that little Blackberry Cove that's at the bottom of Maple Ave, which is right behind K. Hovnanian. But if you actually go down there, and I walk my dog past it all the time, it's 20 feet of sand beach, there's no dock, and it's right next to a storm drain. So who really wants to walk in the water and get on their stand-up paddleboard or kayak in a spot like that? It's a really, this area that we're at is really uniquely suited for the sport of rowing and for all man-powered water sports in general. So basically, currently we row out of Shrewsbury Sailing and Yacht Club, which is all the way over here in Oceanport, and one of the issues that we have is that due to prevailing winds and sandbars out here, it's actually really unsafe to get around Sands Point most days. This Branchport Creek is what we use every single day for practice. If you've ever been driving along there, you probably see us. If you go over Monmouth Boulevard, you probably see us all the time. And so this is an incredibly safe, this is all no wake. It's always very flat. It's always minimally tidal. If I were somebody who wanted to launch a small boat, manpower, this is a perfectly acceptable, nice spot to do it from, and it's one of the best spots that you can pick for the sport of rowing for us right now. The issue that we have, you know, when I first started coaching at CBA, there were about 15, maybe 20 high school rowing programs in the state of New Jersey. There are over 60 now. There are over 100 rowing organizations in the state, and we're in 2 counties that share one dock that you can do the sport on, and Rumson controls it and won't let anyone on it. So this would allow anybody who wanted to row a single or or canoe or kayak to row out of this facility. And then where we have fenced in, what I'm proposing is this is what's currently on the site right now. That's a couple days ago at the site. So that's what's currently there. What we're proposing is a large public dock here, and the fencing would only be here. So all of the access is still, nothing's restricted. Anyone who wanted to come down and use that could use it anytime they want. The only thing that we're asking is there to be no fishing and crabbing. And you'll see when we go to show you the use of a rowing dock, you'll see why. This is what an example of.
Before you do that, can you just go back to the last slide, because what you're showing us is different than what you handed out.
Oh yeah, it's like that was T&M's version of it. We mocked up one separately, but it's the same concept. They might just.
The only difference is that I'm just trying to. Does it impact on the use of the? I assume that that's a road that goes or.
Yes, so there's a current road in place. That quite frankly, for my purposes right now, I have no issue with the current road that's in place. The engineering, Tom actually had some concerns about whether or not driving boats and trailers in on this pad whether the pad was sufficient for it.
So
I'm not my question. My question is that it impacts on that, and this is farther away from the ball fields. I'm just trying to see whether or not it impacts the use of the ball fields.
I think if you wanted to keep the ball fields, I think you could, yes.
You could, yeah.
Yes.
If you wanted to keep that field, we can certainly work around what's there without interrupting.
Well, it would seem that would make sense, right?
Yeah, we're gonna have to keep.
You're not gonna.
Our rec director said this field is utilized.
That's, we can certainly do this without any impact on the ball field. That's not a problem. So that's what a typical launch dock looks like. These are for safety. If anyone goes in the water, we have safety equipment, everything you could possibly need to make sure that when the athletes are out in the water, whether it's middle school, high school kids, that you have the ability to have rescue capacity with them. But these, again, have to be kept safe from vandalism, which is why we propose the launch dock be only within the confines of the fenced-in area that's going to protect the rowing equipment. This would be the dock that would be used by the community and would be no access would ever be restricted. You can get to it whenever you want it. We just have to have something on site to protect what is valuable equipment from vandalism. And to give some sense, that's the size of, almost everybody in this picture is 6'5" or bigger. So to give you a sense of just how huge this equipment is and just how specific the kind of dock that you need to use is, this is an example of why these shells can't just come in and out every day. You can't put that on the on top of somebody's car. And this is the reason why we would need no fishing and crabbing, because anytime you get in to launch a canoe or a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard, you're going to take your shoes off. And anyone who's ever been on a dock that's been crabbed off of, you have shells, you have bones, you have chicken, raw chicken, it's just, the two don't really mix. Not to mention the fact that 200 meters down the creek, there's a park that's perfectly suitable, bulkheaded for fishing and crabbing. So that would be the only thing that we would ask, because quite frankly, that one activity would really ruin the dock for anybody that was trying to use it for rowing. But yeah, there's an example of how we could do it without impacting the baseball field.
And that is the fenced-in area.
That's the proposed fenced-in area. This would all be left open. You know, we talked about a small turnaround and drop-off area so that people could, you know, you don't want to park in the lot that's all the way here and carry a stand-up paddleboard the distance of that park. So we were proposing a small area here where you could drop off your boats onto a rack if you wanted to, and then park your car wherever the closest parking available, which I think is again on the other side of the field, and then you would be able to carry your boat down and launch off the dock.
Just for perspective, we just repeated this slide a couple of different times, just to give some sense of
What's there currently, what will be there, and the benefits, okay?
So what we're proposing for the enclosure is just a simple 8 or 10 foot tennis court fence with the wind barrier, just like that, so that you know, the rowing shells that are on the racks aren't sort of just out in public view. So there's a little bit of privacy to it.
How high are the racks?
So that's something that we're probably going to custom them based on the size of the site. So you could tell us this would be our height preference, and we can make them to fit.
These are just some examples of other.
Yeah, these are examples of
with the type of equipment that's going to be stored there. Obviously, it doesn't have to be enclosed. These are just some examples of some clubs here that have done this. Okay.
And the oars, same thing. They're 12 and a half feet long, so you can't just put them in your car. You know. Probably put that one. So what we're essentially proposing would be that Monmouth Rowing Center would purchase both of the floating docks and all of the necessary fencing and racks in exchange for a lease on the property or lease on the racks that are inside of the property and use of that dock as well. So we wouldn't be restricting anybody's access to the public dock. All we would be doing is keeping the equipment where it needs to be in order to use it, because otherwise, without the equipment on site, there's no point for us. You just can't. It takes an hour. It takes 9 people an hour to de-rig and then re-rig one of these things.
What type of site improvements are you referring to?
So site improvements would fall again, it's going to depend on what T&M thinks with regard to the path on the way in, but all we would really be looking for, ideally running water, because we're in salt water, and so the equipment does need to be rinsed off. But that could be as simple as a hose hookup. That's what we're using right now. And it would be nice if there were some lights, and that's really about it. Security. Yeah, for security purposes. Other than that, we're not really, what you could choose to do with it going forward, the sky's the limit, and we have some examples of some other programs that started with a fenced-in lot and ultimately enough people partnered on board and chose to expand it into something greater. But for right now, all we really need are those 2 docks and that fence and just a little bit of I guess, work.
It's really just an access drive to get into the site, so the trucks or the vehicles could drop the boats off. They could pull in, drop the boats off, and then pull back out. What's there right now, it's a little narrow, it's probably a little too thin, so we would just have to widen it a little bit, make it a little bit thicker. But maybe, Scott, can you talk about some of the benefits for the city itself,
Sure.
Some
some different
different
programs for the youth?
First, are those widenings part of the, you said you wanted a spigot for water. Are we talking about widening the road and building a parking lot?
Again, that would be up to the city of Long Branch. I mean, if I need to put a 500 gallon tank on a little trailer and use it for water.
No, that wasn't my question.
No, no.
My question was not the water. My question was
We're
talking about widening the road and building parking. Who's going to do that? You?
No, that's why I don't need the road. Personally, I don't think I need the road widened. Sorry.
Can I just answer that?
Yeah.
So basically, when the engineers come in, and you know how they do their projects, they're gonna maximize what needs to be done. For Scott's program, for this particular program, we don't need car access. The kids can carry it originally just to put it back there, but it's gonna be suitable for the summer programs where we're gonna open it up for the community, where they might have kayaks that they don't wanna carry in. For the particular Monmouth Rowing Center, you don't need to widen the roads or anything to do anything besides just, asking for the water and maybe some electricity for security purposes. But beyond that point, it's just some added stuff that you may want to do down the future or now, while we're doing this, to have a better access for the public. And that's why we looked at that. And engineers will take a look at maximizing what's there to suit whatever needs to be coming in the future, or whatever you need to get done now.
But to answer your question, we could do this with a fence and those dogs
Yeah,
and no.
that's it.
So, Stan, I know you were looking, if you had a couple questions.
Yeah, I do.
Please jump
That's-
in, but before you do that, the other component that you had mentioned to us was classes, training
Sure.
for
Yeah.
Long Branch kids.
Sure.
Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So what we currently offer, we offer summer programs where we can have learn to row for 7th and 8th graders. We offer programs so that athletes who row at other high schools, like for example, we did our summer program last summer had a kid who was home from school from Petty rowing for us. Some of the athletes from Rumson came over and rowed for us. We had a kid who lives in Belmar who rows at Kent, goes to boarding school. So we basically open it up so that if you live anywhere in the area and you want to be involved over the summer, that we're not in a position right now where we can offer that fall and spring yet. We're hoping to get there. But for right now, what I would like to do is expand first to the middle schools and really get some interest in the 7th and 8th graders, getting them involved in the sport, teaching them some basic learn to row, and then giving them some opportunities to move up and do some intermediate rowing, possibly go to some races over the summer. And then what I would also, if Long Branch's wishes were that we also have a separate dedicated area where we could offer canoe and kayak racks for year-round storage, that's absolutely something that we could accommodate.
Is that something you charge for typically for that?
Typically, yes, you would.
So
Because
would there be some arrangement where Long Branch kids would not have to pay?
we could certainly, that would certainly be something that we could work out, absolutely.
So do you have some models of arrangements like that, some contracts or memorandums of understanding that you already have?
We do. What we found in this process is that they're wildly different from site to site.
Mhm.
We found a site up in North Jersey where the New York Rowing Association on the Overpeck Creek is charging St. Peter's Prep, Don Bosco Prep, and Manhattan College $20,000 a season
Yeah.
to row off of a site pretty similar to what we're talking about. Now, it already has docks, it already has some improvements, but then you find other operations, like for example, down in Camden County, Camden County started with a fenced-in area exactly like we're discussing. They started with a dock that was actually built by a number of the local parents. And there was so much interest inside of 5 years. They had 7 or 8 high schools that got on board. Rutgers Camden got on board. They turned around in the county, built a $4.5 or $5 million rowing center on the same site that used to be just a fence and a dock. So, I mean, what I'm proposing is a fence and a dock, and let's see how much interest we get. And if Monmouth University decides, hey, you know what? Now there's access. Maybe we'd like to have a crew program. You know, that would be something that we could accommodate on that site. If Long Branch High School decided, hey, you know what, there's been middle school programs going on for a couple summers now, and now we've got 10 or 15 kids that go to Long Branch High School that are knocking on the AD's door and saying, hey, you know what, we'd like to have a crew program. Well, for 15 years, we've fought for this access that we don't have. I mean, we sent 2 kids to the emergency room last fall because they step on stuff. Because we don't have a dock. It's it's certainly not ideal for what we're doing, and for what it could potentially offer to the community. I mean, just from our perspective, can you put the Monmouth Juniors, the one with us at the end of Henley?
You got it.
Just to put into perspective, our first graduating class out of Monmouth Junior Rowing Club, these gentlemen right here, and every one of these is going to this school to row as a recruited athlete. He's going to Northeastern. He's currently at the University of Pennsylvania. He's at Dartmouth. He's also at Penn. He's at Northeastern. He's going to Northeastern next year. He's at Cal San Diego. This gentleman is at MIT, and he's at the United States Naval Academy. So it gives you an idea of what the sport can offer. There are very few other sports that the college opportunities are so far and above and beyond compared to the number of high school athletes that have access to this. There would be more rowing if there was more access.
So, just to add on that, so currently teaches at, coaches at Christian Brothers Academy. Half the Ivy League kids that go on to the Ivy League schools are from the crew team.
50% of CBA's Ivy Leaguers over the last 8 years.
So what it's going to open up for the community is that opportunity to get into a sport it's not been out there for the average person or for, you know, Long Branch itself.
The
And that's where-
obstacles for new
And
programs,
money, yeah.
the obstacles for new programs are the same as they've always been. Access, that initial startup cost of the dock is a huge cost. It's gonna, you know, it's gonna run upwards of $125,000.
Which we'll take care of.
Which we're gonna take care of. The launches, they're $20,000 a piece. CBA has almost $500,000 of equipment, so if we can get this stuff on site, and there's already agreement between my club and CBA, a use agreement with that equipment, then all of a sudden now, it opens up the possibility that if somebody comes to us and says, hey, we've got 6 people or 8 people and we want to get something started, I probably have a boat to rent them, and now I have a rack to rent them, and now a dock exists that they can use.
So let me jump in for a second,
Sure.
because I'm not sure what you were expecting as far as action tonight. So let me, wait a minute.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
let me just respond for a
Sure.
second. I think it's a spectacular idea. But there's too much information right now to be discussed.
Right.
You know, I don't know if you have a written proposal, I don't know if you have any, you know, money, anything about costs and all that stuff. I would pick up on exactly what Mary Jane said on the previous presentation. I think, I'm going to speak for myself, but you certainly have piqued my interest and support. But I think this needs a smaller group, maybe a written proposal, something that we can actually, you know,
Yes,
respond to.
And to answer your question, that's kind of what I was hoping for going forward, was to
Okay.
pique everyone's interest,
Yeah.
so that we can sit down and talk about. I'm open to make this happen any way I can possibly do it. I'm not looking to profit. I just really want kids to have access to the water and to be
Yeah.
able to do this, because it's an incredible spot. I can tell you right now, people in Long Branch and Oceanport, the first day we were out this March, they come out of their houses and sit and watch us.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a visibly fantastic sport. It's really, you know, it's just getting people in that park and out on the water and putting some life in there and getting people fit and possibly giving kids opportunities to get into better schools. And then again, through the club that we currently have going under Monmouth Rowing Center's Monmouth Junior Rowing Club, I rent space, indoor rowing tank space, ergometer space, weight room space from CBA. So any student that joined over the summer at that site would then have access to all of those facilities, you know, that are already in place at CBA.
I think what would be important to me, and I'm guessing to some council members as well, is that this is you're right, I mean, it's a sport that I've always looked at, known nothing about, heard that it's very expensive, and just never even considered, because I wouldn't know where to go, probably couldn't afford it. So I guess what I think would be important, I'll speak for myself, but I think for all of us, is that if there was an opportunity for students in Long Branch to get involved in this, and somehow at no cost or access to the equipment, because I'm guessing that's very expensive too, that would be an important component of our agreeing to that.
Yes.
That'd be very, but to us, make sure we get the Long Branch students involved.
Gotcha.
So I mean, I agree with everything that Anita said, and I understand this is trying to see what we're interested in.
No, and that's.
But I would say that that's a priority.
Scott,
Sure.
Scott, can you also just, on piggyback on what we're talking about here, have opportunity for Long Branch youth to get involved in this? Talk a little bit about Title IX, which would be more geared towards the female end of it, as we talk
Sure.
about.
Well, I mean, if you look at the collegiate level, so when I coached collegiately, I coached women's rowing collegiately, both at Princeton and University of Pennsylvania, and I was the primary recruiter for each of those programs for a number of years. I can tell you that on the men's side, there are a lot of opportunities collegiately in rowing. On the women's side, it's an entirely different animal. There are upwards of 135 NCAA Division I women's rowing programs that have a full complement of 24 full scholarships.
Wow.
And to the point where there are so few women's rowing programs available at the high school level that college coaches are actually recruiting volleyball players and swimmers because they don't have enough girls who've been rowing to fill all the scholarship spots that they have. So, I mean, I've said repeatedly to anyone who will listen, if you have a daughter that you get involved in this sport in 7th or 8th grade, you should not pay full price for college under any circumstances. I mean, it really would provide tremendous opportunities. My idea for getting it off the ground, you can offer, if we went out to Long Branch High School and put up signs right now saying crew tryouts on Monday, most likely no one would show up. Nobody knows anything about the sport. My idea would be to start the 7th and 8th graders learning. And then all we're doing is sending kids who know how to row all the way into Long Branch High School. Most of the time with the high school programs, if they haven't done it before they got there, they default to whatever sport they did previously. So the reason we like to start 7th and 8th graders is give them something that they've never done before. Let them try a little bit of a different sport, and then you have Long Branch High School with all of a sudden, let's say 8 kids do it the first year. Well, now there's 8 kids in the freshman class that have rowed. Then all of a sudden we get 8 or 10 more the next year. Now there's 20 kids in the high school that have rowed before and might have an interest. Then all of a sudden they turn around and come to us. We can certainly figure out how to get boats, how to get them in the water. And we'll have the racks, we'll have the docks, we'll have everything there for them to start up with nowhere near the cost that a normal high school.
And Scott, what club up north do you compete with more than anybody else?
Up north?
Montclair.
Oh, Montclair.
Which is a public program.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, just in the interest of a full agenda, and the idea, you have you've won us over in terms of further exploration.
That was my only goal for the evening. So.
Yeah, okay. Just double check of you, all right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm happy to come back and give an expanded presentation.
Yeah, well, I think it is a small group, Mary Jane, just like you said before. Maybe looking at it.
It's a small group, but obviously the mayor will be here, but he would probably need Department of Public Works to have some input on what you're going to do. You would need the recreation department there, because this field is used, and that fence looks like it's pretty close. So one of my major concerns would be the fact that some of that would be taken away, or I just have a concern with that. So
yeah, just so you guys know, the plans that were presented are very preliminary, very conceptual, just kind of rough and stuff. So we could certainly work with your rec director, DPW, to maximize the existing uses out there, make sure there's no impact.
When you open up and say these fields are not used, and that's not true. Yeah, they are used. Certainly baseball, they're definitely. Our basketball courts are used.
Oh, the basketball court. I see people all the time. Yeah, we can absolutely. We can absolutely work this project without impacting the baseball field. I'm confident. Having walked the property now a number of times and measured it ourselves, we can absolutely accommodate this project without impacting the baseball field.
And last thing I would have, Mayor, I've seen that list, Trinity Hall and so on.
Yes.
Those schools, Rainy and so on. Well, if you see any, the Long Branch, the Asbury Park, Red Bank. Yeah.
The Long Branch.
Yeah, no, right, that's what I'm saying.
The reason I didn't put Red Bank.
For presentation purposes, but I'm saying those are private schools.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and that is the reason why it's so much beneficial to
Chris,
start here.
The reason I listed Trinity and Randy is they already have
a
programs up and going.
Right, they would benefit, but I want to be comfortable, no matter which way you go, obviously, that Long Branch is benefit.
Right.
Yeah,
those other schools, they already have those programs, and they have the money to go wherever they need to go. So before we give up.
If we're looking to set up a scenario where Long Branch can get involved with no cost for boats, renting space back to these programs is going to be the way to do it. Renting racks to Trinity, we'd have to sit down and come up with obviously an arrangement that makes sense. But yeah, there's absolutely no reason. Having started a group program at the high school level myself, I know that the approach of just walking in and dropping it on Long Branch's AD is not the best way to get it. The best way to get it done is to start it with the younger kids, and then as soon as we build the interest, then obviously you strike, and having all that equipment down there and having it available to Monmouth Rowing Center puts us in a position where we could get them on the water for very low cost.
I think that next time we meet, to further discuss it, we should also include the Long Branch Board of Education,
Sure.
If that's what you want, I think that we talked about this, and to make it a bigger and open to the whole community, that's what would be our next step. That's up to you guys, and that was, forcing us to say, hey, that we want that. So just the last point, I can tell you about Scott. He is a guru when it comes to getting the kids into certain schools. You can have an average SAT score and just above average GPA. He's gotten kids into Princeton and everything else. So I don't want to undersell what he can do. My son and all the dads here, that's part of this program, our kids went to the program, so we know what happens, My kid is a junior at Wisconsin, It is the largest Division I men's rowing team. And the kid who's a senior is his mentor, basically, because my son, he's a captain of the team. They have close to about 90 guys on the team. So these are opportunities, and Dan's son is going to Northeastern. So I can tell you, all these schools, and believe me, I have another one that goes to Mass, and he doesn't have a specialized program that he's done with, like my other son is, and it's very difficult. We're going to all these different schools, to the top schools, and the kids that are at CBA that he's applying with don't have the scores that he has, but we'll get into some of these programs because of it. So it really is a meaningful thing.
Stan, just, did you have any concerns for the group, just so we know for the next meeting what?
Yes. Yeah, I'm concerned the area. That's our major flood area in the entire town. Okay, every time there's any type of a full moon, northeastern, even the slightest 20, 25 mile an hour northeastern, that area floods out. The reason that was never used or never fixed up any more than just the baseball field, stuff like that, is because of the water that's up there. That area is constantly wet. I'm concerned that how you're going to handle that as far as putting, any kind of racks over there or anything like that with the fencing and stuff like that with the water coming up. Jake will testify. We tried to put a shed out there on the other side of the baseball field. It floated away. We had to go in the river and get it. I'm also concerned with your access. There's a small path over there. The baseball left field, the baseball field runs right along that. You make that wider, you're going to take out the baseball field. And that baseball field is used all the time by adults and stuff like that. It's not used by the Little League as much, but it is used by adult softball teams and stuff like that. So
yeah,
just to think about it. I don't want to go on.
No,
we're running late, but that is a major flood area. That entire Atlantic Avenue area and that park floods out all the time. So I don't know how you're going to guide.
Yeah, that's something that we would look at. If the city decides to move forward, we would get into the specifics of surveying everything out in the river as well as on the land, looking at the historic flooding events, and that's something that we would work out during the design if we need specialized anchoring systems or whatnot for it. And as far as the baseball field goes, we can certainly keep it. We won't have to modify it at all. It looks like there's enough, even if we do decide to do a new access road at some point. From what I looked at, it looks like it's still wide enough to put that in without having to shift the field or take down any other fences.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just ask you to confirm two things? That you talked to Green Acres?
Yes.
Because this type of joint venture on Green Acres property could be very complicated.
So Green Acres is a division of NJDEP. They oversee all parklands in the state. This is not a funded property through Green Acres, so it's just on the ROTC list as an open space park property. So we did speak with Jessica Patterson at DEP to see if there's any issues from their end as far as having somewhat of a public-private partnership and a private area that would be on this public park. And they came back and they told us no, there would be no issues. It's really no different than if you have a Little League or other travel baseball team that's not associated with the city who sets up some trailers or storage sheds for their equipment. So it's really no different than other sports having private storage areas.
And was there any need or foreseen need for any bulkhead repair or improvement?
That is something that we could look at and talk to the city about. As far as the floating docks, we can work around the bulkhead. We can kind of do an anchoring system behind the bulkhead. But if there are some areas of the bulkhead that do look like they need some improvements, now would be the time to do that.
For you to do it for us?
Yeah, well, that's for you guys to work out.
There's trade-offs here.
Correct.
And you're getting a pretty big return on your investment, but that was my understanding that there would be other improvements that would go with this. Also, permitting would all be that would be part of the deal, the entire project.
Correct. Yes, there is a good amount of permitting through DEP to get this done. That's something that we would work with the crew club on, if you proceed.
All right. Okay. Pick up again later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is 7 President's Park. Paul Hood.
see you.
Hi, nice to see you again. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us. Joe's gonna hopefully.
I'm gonna try to figure this out, yes.
Just plug it into the left-hand side there.
The left-hand
Yeah, that's the only way to put the drive.
Thank you. My name is Paul Gleeks. I'm the principal park planner for the Monmouth County Park System. And I head up our planning division. That's Joe Sardonia. He's our chief landscape architect, and he heads up our design division. We're here to talk to you about kind of finalizing some future improvements at 7 Presidents Oceanfront Park. We came in and had a brief discussion a couple months ago, and the mayor and councilwoman decided it would make sense to come speak to you tonight. To give you some history, we have been working on new designs and new improvements at the park for over a decade. And we were in with the prior administration, and we present some ideas and they give us some feedback. We go back to the drawing board and present some more ideas and get some more feedback. So we've kind of gone back and forth through that process several times, and now we're really ready to move forward. We have $100,000 in capital funds allocated for soft costs, meaning design and permitting, to move this project forward right now. And then once we get that process complete, we would then allocate hard cost funds through our capital budget to do the improvements. So if you look up on the screen here, this is the park. And what we're really looking to do are make a number of improvements to the park. Joe can go through them in detail, but overall, we're looking to complete a pedestrian multi-use pathway around the park to connect to your promenade, to get people moving from north to south, and another connection, because right now the park kind of sits as a block in that area. Because of the way we collect our fees and because of the infrastructure and everything else, it's hard for folks to come and get around the park and keep going on their north-south journey up and down the seashore. What this would do would create a multi-use path starting on to the right of the screen, connecting into your promenade, going around the park and connecting back out on the other side. The other thing we're looking to do, as you know, we do have traffic backups, so we're also planning on doing some internal circulation changes. So one of the ideas is to have one way in and then 2 ways out, and that would make some changes as well to the circulation. And the third is we have a long-term vision of perhaps turning sections of Old Ocean Ave into a promenade. So Joe, if you want to walk them through some of the design details. The reason why we're here is that if the city is willing to give up some of its on-street parking, its paid parking spaces, we'll have more room to do more. So we're looking to see if the benefits and the improvements we're looking to make are worth it to the city in order to give up a portion of your paid parking. So we have a question about, will you give up some paid parking in front of the main park itself on the one side of the street? And do you have any problems giving up additional paid parking and the idea of closing off Ocean Ave? So that's what we're here to discuss, and I'll turn it over to Joe.
Okay, this is the night of information overload, so I'll give you more. Okay, anyway, this is, don't squint at this too much, I'm gonna go into detail, but this is 7 Presidents Park, and just to orient you, the existing Long Branch Promenade ends here. This is Seaview Avenue, this is 36 coming in, right in here, this is our current entrance. Okay, this is the north, what we call the north end, which has our skate park and some parking, and of course, the entire beach and so on. So, let's see how I advance this thing. How do I advance this thing?
Just tap on it, I think.
Just
Is
tap
that
on
PowerPoint?
Maybe slide it.
Got it?
No, slide it.
Okay, no, that's not it.
Yeah, he had something on the slide before.
Maybe
But
a
it's
slide.
on the slide.
Yeah, it's not a slideshow, that made it larger, so let me get it down. I want to advance to the next slide.
Try see all photos up in the corner and see if that'll bring up in the
corner. See all photos?
Oh, see that?
Here, yeah, who can operate a computer.
Close that, never mind. No, all right. close that and go back to the,
She had it all, Joe.
let's bring up the folder. Maybe that will be. There we go.
Okay, I'll do it that way. So very good.
Between here and then.
Okay, good. So sorry. But anyway, I'm going to start from the south and work our way north. But one of the things, as Paul explained, we were trying to do was to create a pedestrian pathway around the perimeter, which would run all the way around the park. So, be it an urban area and so forth, and you know, it would be relatively linear, and so the promenade, the Long Branch Promenade, now ends at this point. I always kind of thought that was a shame to just end right there, and there's really no good way to safely get around when the entrance here is closed. So part of what we, you know, and the staff had a real good time working on this, but part of what we thought was to somehow try to tie the park in with Long Branch, with the promenade, and create a plaza in here, because this is a beautiful view to the north up the beach and out, and so this could be, create this plaza in here, and also create a walkway, potential bikeway, all the way around the park, as well as possibly in the off-season, offering a paved pathway through the middle of the park. Okay, so when we're not collecting fees or anything like that, or off-season, people could then come through the center of the park to get from one end to the other, and at other times they would be able to go around the park. So one of the things we looked at, and we used the residential standards here, was, you know, Old Ocean Avenue here, but by giving up park, you know, the parking along the east side of Old Ocean Avenue in front of here, we would be able to create a 10-foot two-way bike lane and a 5-foot walkway. And then it would be pretty safe for, you know, pedestrians and bikers not to get involved in the traffic and so forth. And this would go all the way around the perimeter. Now we are trying to you know, kind of maintain our existing screening and landscaping along here, but it could be fit in, and you know, by taking the use of the opportunity to park. And I think Ocean Avenue is 47 feet wide in this location. Okay, this here is the center of the park. There are times when traffic is really backed up in the summer, and it backs up and it spills out onto Ocean Avenue and Ocean Boulevard. So one of the things we were looking at was changing our circulation a bit, and what we would then be able to do, because right now we have 3 lanes in and 1 lane out. Okay, so anybody who gets in here has to then find their way back out, and this gets very cluttered up in here, and I think it's got a high rate of accidents, minor accidents and stuff. What we were thinking of doing is by redoing the interior here, we could then have a one-way in, 4 lanes in, and then we could bring people out at other locations. So, if you wanted to see that, this traffic would come in, go through here, and then come back out here at this location, and then go down to Avenel and exit Avenel without going back out onto 36. And on this side, we could exit out And this wouldn't be improved parking, the blue is just overflow, so it would not be improved. But we would improve this here, and these already paved lots. But, you know, people would come in and then come out on Seaview and go out and exit on 36. So that would then reduce conflicts in this area right here. So, you know, continuing on through the park, we've got the perimeter trail. I mean, here, we, you know, just aside for some other things, the exit will come out here, and then people could come down this way and exit out on the 36. And we would eliminate this lot in here, which then gives the, you know, gives the dunes a chance to expand. All dunes in this location, they were built in 1983. They're 26, 27, 28 feet high, above sea level right now. And when we did have Sandy, this area was well protected. We had no impacts whatsoever on it. All right, but so we'd like to give the dunes a chance, because the dunes tend to migrate, and give them a little bit more room and move out of this. And this would become a group use rental area, and this would be our internal pathway through, as well as the perimeter trail around. And this is a concept where we would look to turn Old Ocean Boulevard on the north side of the park into a pedestrian way. Okay, so right now the only two, there's two high rises that sit here. This high rise currently has an entrance off of Old Ocean Avenue to the park in here. There's also access this way. This high rise has, off of Marion Avenue, has their access in back. So these folks would not be impacted at all. We kind of showed this. If we needed to, we could provide a lane to access in there, but this would become a pedestrian way, and that would enable the dunes that we're currently developing in front of the wall, the old seawall, would enable them to be able to migrate back. You know, and staff kind of took a look at a seashell theme here. You know, I think it would be a great, you know, extension of the promenade all along the shore, and eventually maybe we could connect up and keep going. You know, there's bikeways and stuff that are being worked on coming down Ocean Avenue. So eventually maybe to connect up with that. But basically, in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're looking at. And this was just kind of some of the, you know, staff decided they liked the clamshell theme for the entrances, so we got a snail and a scallop, and, you know, a nautilus and that sort of thing. But this would kind of be the, you know, the idea is on the entrance we would create something here to kind of hide the old pump station that's back there. So right now it's all in a concept phase, you know, but you know, wanting to get to see how people feel about it before moving forward. But you know, and this isn't something that's going to happen overnight, guys. I mean, you know, it's one of these long-range things that are gonna take time, gonna take money, you know, that sort of thing. So one of the things we're hoping for is, you know, at least if we can at first, you know, buy into the perimeter pathway type idea, we can start working on that. We really want to try to encourage more people into our park through walking or biking or other means of transportation. You know, I mean, right now, you know, this whole area gets overloaded with traffic and everything else. So we'd really like to include more alternate means of transportation and kind of open this park up to the pedestrians, you know, on the promenade and coming in and that sort of thing. So that's one of the things we're trying to do here. So with that,
so if you could go back to the slide that had the that showed the perimeter trail detail.
The
number 3.
Detail?
Yeah, the detail. Yeah, so that would help. So what we do have funds already allocated for is our permit. And so we have to go to CAFRA and you have to go to DEP to get all these permits. And what we tend to do, what they want to see from us is everything we want to do. So it's not some sort of creeping, you know, expansion over time. We want to show, put all our cards on the table and say, this is what we want to do. So that when we get the permit, we have the permit and we can take our time developing the improvements over time, approved and, you know, buildable under that permit. So we'd like to kind of get an understanding of all of these elements together. But like Joe had said, we won't be building them in the next 2 years. We will start with the perimeter trail. That would be something we'd want to provide capital funding for in the next 2 years. And then other elements would be added as we go. So there's 3 main questions we have. One is, are you willing to give up the paid parking on the Old Ocean Ave? Our numbers now, give or take 1 or 2, from Seaview through over to across the main section.
Seaview to Avenel.
From Seaview to Avenel is about 88 spaces.
88 spaces are there right now.
So that's the first question we have. Are you willing to give up the 88 spaces to give us the extra room within the right of way? We'd have to get an easement from you to allow us to do the trail improvements in the right of way. But that would give you the 10-foot two-way bike lane and a 5-foot walkway. If the city is not willing to give up the parking, we could probably put a 5-foot sidewalk in, and that would be a multiple use, maybe 6-foot sidewalk. But you'd have the interaction between the walkers, the bikers, the strollers, and everything else all in there. The third backup option we've looked at, which would take more work, would be to reduce the travel, completely redesign that section of Ocean Ave to reduce the travel ways, reduce the size of the parking spaces, make it more of a residential street design where you'd only have 7 or 8 foot wide, wide parking spaces, and the travel lanes would go down to 10 feet rather than the current 15 you have there. The one nice thing is that it's a decent sized cartway, from curb to curb there's room. So if you think you could go with fewer parking in some areas, shorter parking, if you wanted to redesign the lanes, since some of the commercial uses have left and you only have, most of that area has just residential, except for like one office, I guess.
Yeah, you could design this street as a residential street, and what right now in your parking, which I think is about 9 foot, and now in your lanes, which would then enable, the whole issue with parking on the one side is, especially with biking, is, you always have to be aware of somebody opening the car door, and, there's always kind of a conflict there, so we need to be aware of that. So in that concept, it would be kind of be set up just a little bit different than if that area were available for the bike lane next to the travel lane, and then you eliminate the issue with parking and doors and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so the easiest step is to give us the maximum flexibility to design the walkway is to give up the parking. After that, we'd have to do a smaller, combined use kind of pathway on our site, or the third would be to redesign the entire section. That's the first question we have for you, and for you to think about. The second is our revised internal circulation. That has less impact. You'd have to lose maybe 1 or 2 parking spaces on Seaview. And we have an existing driveway that comes out to Old Ocean now, where there is no parking in front of that. So that's a much smaller impact. But for us, it's more capital on our site.
Well, I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
The second part we're asking about is our revision to the internal circulation Joe went through, about turning the main entrance into 4-way in and then having the exits out on the left and the right of the site.
There'll be one exit.
So the one exit to the one side is already in an existing curb cut, but to the other side on Seaview, we probably had to use 1 or 2 parking spaces to create a new driveway entrance on that side for that circulation pattern. And then the third is the bigger question about the concept of the promenade. There are, on that section, there's about 72 on-street parking. We wouldn't take all of it, but pretty much everything from Avenel over to Atlantic would be lost. We think that none of the property owners would be impacted. They'd still have access to their properties. The park system would take on the outreach to that, contact those landowners, contact the residents, and have public information sessions and get their feedback and see what they thought about it, with the city involved as a participant, but we would do the legwork and the noticing and take the cost of organizing all of that. And as long as they bought into it, then it would be, the second question would be the street parking on that area, but to provide this expanded public amenity, where you've removed the road from the ocean front, and now you have the ability to have a promenade with beach grass and dunes and everything else that would tie into the rest of the park and tie into our north end.
And of course, we obviously would have to design it so you still could maintain service and emergency access. There's still utilities in the road that would have to be accessed by the utility companies, so any final design would have to take all that into consideration.
And we also discussed in our meeting the expansion of the skate park as well.
That's where the inline skating rink is in the center there. We're looking to get on your planning board agenda for a capital review.
You're going to get first look.
You're getting to see this before the planning board does.
Okay, so anyway, this is what we hope to present for capital review, your planning board agenda. But I'm sure you're all aware that there used to be an inline skate rink in this area in here, which was wiped out by Sandy. We never really got much use out of that skate rink, so it was decided we would not rebuild it. And basically it's been an eyesore since then, But one of the things our program people wanted and our skate people wanted was they wanted another skate feature where they could have programs and classes and stuff like that. The existing bowl we have there is just a little bit too steep, except for experienced skateboarders and skaters. So we worked with a skate company, Spawn Land, and kind of designed a weird looking thing, designed a series of half pipes and bowls and stuff like that, which would be separate. This is the existing skateplex up here. We would demolish all the pavement that's in here and put this new feature in there. And I've also redo all the walkways, and it's kind of gotten, it's dated, it's worn out and stuff like that. So, and we thought another good amenity would be to provide an exercise area in this area for maybe parents who drop their kids off for a lesson, or people who are running along the beach or whatever. So we would also create an exercise area in here. So that's kind of providing all goes well, we could actually be in construction with this year.
So that's something that doesn't need council action. That's something that we're just doing internally. But under the Michigan Land Use Law, we come before your planning board to explain it all and get their comments. So we prepared our plans, and we were just waiting to submit and get a date to come in to the planning board.
And then we also talked about bathroom facilities on Seaview, where like a sitting area.
Well, the plaza is planned for there. We have no plans at this time to create a second public restroom up in that plaza area.
I'm talking about on Seaview, where the promenade ends.
Where the promenade ends, we have intentions to develop a plaza, the Nautilus Plaza, and perhaps a sun shelter, or maybe even some ticketing or access, but we have no plans. The park system is not prepared to take on the cost and the maintenance and the permitting for a new restroom building there. It's
Yeah,
just-
right now, we have a restroom building on the north end here. We have a restroom building. We have restrooms in the pavilion here. And we have that former, that predated us, there was an octagonal restroom building right near the pump station, right here. So right now, we have 3 permanent restrooms, which are open all year. This one, the pavilion, and the north end.
So the access improvements would allow access, easier access to our existing restroom facilities, but at this time, we're not prepared to develop a 4th at the site. But we're certainly continue to maintain and operate the 3 on site, and these improvements would improve access to the 3 of them.
Would you consider, instead of doing all that parking, turning that to a one-way on the streets on Ocean Avenue?
Which way, what way?
Yeah.
Either way, you know what I mean, whatever's coming down.
You're talking here?
No, we're talking about the Ocean Avenue in front of.
Ocean Avenue?
Right there. I mean, it's just a question.
You know,
there's a lot of parking to give up.
I think we would have an easier time than perhaps your traffic safety would. You know, you'd have to review with your engineering, your traffic safety folks to see if that's something you would entertain. I don't think we'd have a problem with it because our access would kind of crosses that. But that's certainly something we could, you know, if the city supports that idea and could come up with, and your traffic engineers and your traffic safety officers are okay with that concept, I think we can certainly work with it.
Our chief and our lieutenant from traffic are here, they're invited. Any quick comments?
Quickly, I like the idea of the bike path. I think we need more in the city, but I think we really have to look into where they want to put it, and that's a lot of spaces to lose.
What's the demand on those spaces?
We could give you, I'm sure we could go back and see what we made last year on those.
It's going to be a significant residential issue too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people park there and that kind of stuff. And also, you know, I'm not so sure the bike path should go right on the road like that. I would prefer to be back maybe more on your property. So it's just a little bit of a safety factor there. I don't know if that would be.
If you go to the detail, the sidewalk is on the outside.
Sidewalk's on the outside, so it'll be a little bit safer, yeah.
So you have the 5-foot, sorry, I hate to talk to your man. Yeah. There would be the 5-foot sidewalk, and then there'd be the 10-foot bike path in interior. But we run into where our existing fencing and landscaping, our detention basins, and our parking go. So the real estate starts to get smaller. So, and again, it's an ask. We are asking you, you know. So
you have
we
a pretty healthy
understand.
buffer between your parking lot and the fence with the grass that's there.
Right.
And you're not going to expand your parking.
The reason why we want to keep to allow year-round access for all residents to go around the park. We are fee-based. You know, entrance to the park is fee-based, and parking in the park is fee-based. So what we're trying to do is put this amenity outside the fee area. So currently, it would have to be outside the fence. And the fence is there, and it's kind of squeezed in between our existing landscaping, detention facilities, and parking areas. So, and we don't want to pave the entire, it's nice having some green space there as well. So we understand that there's a push-pull here, there's different considerations. This is our preliminary request. We think this works best for us, and we think for safe travel around the site. But we do want to make sure we have this full-service, multi-use pathway outside the fee area. So if you're on the promenade July 4th or, you know, January 1st, doesn't matter, you can continue to go around and through the park and get to the other side without having to pay the fee. Whereas right now, if you want to use our internal pathways to continue through, there's a fee during the season.
Well, a couple of quick things. 160 parking spaces, that's a lot.
Yeah,
Whether
there's
it's,
you know,
whether it's
88 on the one side and then 72 in the promenade area. Yes.
160. Also, I believe the gentleman said, if everything, in a perfect world, they would try and redirect the outgoing traffic down Avenel Boulevard.
Well, I think the idea, you know, in a perfect world,
Well, that's what you
yes.
said, right.
I think I think the idea would be, and we have an existing, like we said, there is an existing drive right now here that's out Old Ocean Avenue, but I think in a perfect world, you know, cars would come out and they'd be directed to Route 36 to go down Avenel and make the left. And there's a light there on Avenel.
Right, but we have two schools there.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Like.
He's talking about this side.
But they're on the other side of 36. They're on the other side of 36.
If they're coming out of 7 Presidents Park.
You're coming out of 7 Presidents Park and you go down Avenel, you need to cross 36. Correct? Am I right? And the schools are on the other side.
He's talking about the cars making a left there at the light to go to July Avenue. Rather than going past the schools, make a left where Ursula Plaza is.
Okay.
That's what he.
Yeah, to get onto the, because this is regional traffic. It's not local traffic, it'd be regional traffic, so they want to try to get onto these main thoroughfares. It's, you know, we probably wouldn't have designed this way from the beginning, this entrance where it is, because of the short block and everything else. So we're trying to retrofit into the existing infrastructure and the street design, a better way of kind of managing that parking and the traffic.
Just gotta remember, there's gonna be another couple projects going over there too. So that's gonna affect, especially if you're gonna go in and you wanna come out on Seaview, you got that one project there in Seaview, then the other one on Ocean Avenue, so you're gonna have an increased traffic there anyway. So I don't know what that light's gonna look like there at Seaview, and you know, for them to get across there, you might have to take a look.
Yeah, we have talked to is it Stavola that's developing that piece?
Stavola's doing the one on the end of Seaview.
Yeah, in here,
Yes.
and we have talked to them about this concept, and they seem to support it. You know, they said they would try, any way we wanted them to tie into it, they would tie into it.
Well, they're all individual lots. I think they're planning to sell those lots.
Yeah, but their design, I think they're doing some improvements to the roundabout and curbing in the area and other kinds of things. We showed them our design and their design, and it meshed pretty well. There wasn't really any conflicts with that. But you know, there would be again from a traffic standpoint. Traditionally, we have a big inflow and then slow outflow. You know, from the beach, everyone wants to get there in the morning. And then some people can handle 2 hours, some people handle 4 hours, and some people don't leave the beach until the lifeguards kick them off. So usually you have a bigger influx on the way in, and that's why 4 ways in are good. But then on the way out, people can kind of, the exiting of the beach tends to be more distributed. Hopefully you'd have less impact
I agree with that. Listen,
over time. So
one more lane going in would probably help you there. Just.
And Paul, as we discussed, I mean, just because I'm in there a lot, you know, you have the light and the second light there, so people are often trying to
speed one or hold up, and if you're not familiar with the area, so hopefully this would be, you know, it would allow us to update some signage in the area and say, you know, all 4 lanes available to come in. We can't change that short block. And to the other comment, in terms of the change of use, our understanding is that we had thought that since there's some of the commercial uses were being redeveloped as residential uses, and those residential uses were meeting their on-site parking requirements, it would have a little less pressure on street parking, because there wouldn't be folks trying to use the street parking for visiting the businesses that were in that block section, that they have the residential users, and they tend to use, ours was the west side, they tend to use they don't want to pay, so they tend to circle a little bit and park on the west side for the residential uses, and a lot of the folks who are at least during the season, the folks that use that on-street parking are coming into the park. And that's what they're doing. They're parking there and then, you know, gaining interest to the park that way. So, but if we could get if a one-way design would work for the city, and then, you know.
Well, it's just something to consider, because I don't think you're gonna be able to make it on Seaview, because you still have to get to those lots and to the circle. But on Ocean Avenue, it's something to consider, just so we can keep our parking, you know what I mean?
No, I do, and that's why we've done staff meetings several times. Now we're here before council. We're not expecting a decision tonight, but we want to give you all the information.
Okay.
If you have If you want copies of our plans or other kinds of things, we can certainly provide them through the administrator. We can do that. You can see how big when we printed them out, they're like 10 feet long.
Yeah, they were a whole lot to the table.
And to us, like I said, the short term is the circulation around the park, and that will be the first discussion point. And we hope to have a more firm answer sooner than not. Our internal changes, I think, are our next piece, and they have far less impact, maybe 1 or 2 spaces, and we'd have to work with you to accommodate the change in traffic flow. But once we establish it, I think within a season or so, we'll work out and coordinate with local police on that, and folks would learn that pretty quickly. The third is a reach, but we think the benefits of it are worth the conversation in terms of converting that old ocean into a promenade and allowing the dunes to develop, having a pedestrian benefit. It turns some of those 2 residential towers go from street front to ocean front, by changing the nature of that drive.
Well, I gotta give it to you, then in Europe, if you go most of the countries, that's what they'd eliminate the traffic completely, just the way you got designed, it's pedestrian safety, just because of that.
So I guess you're in agreement that we can further discuss this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, and then I guess we'll send more information through your administrator, and then we'll check in a couple of weeks or a month or so and see where you are. But just so you know, we're looking to try and do an RFP for the permitting process, this year. We have the money allocated. We want to. We've been talking for a long time. It's time for us to start moving forward, and we want to make sure that we do the improvements to make the park better for the city and for the whole county. So we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I also would like to thank Vi Peters for being here. She's also on the Parks Commission as well as the Board of Education. Thank you, Vi. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Mario, he gave the presentation at the workshop.
Yeah.
The next item is the crane ordinance. Mayor Hall?
Lou, Council President, this is a safety issue that would kind of brought to our attention. A number of municipalities across the state are beginning to do it. You're seeing high-rise construction now in the city. The use of cranes has become kind of more prevalent. And the concept of the ordinance is that when people come in and operate cranes, that the city should have some assurance that these people are licensed appropriately, and the people that are operating them are licensed appropriately, and all of the correct insurances are in place. I know that the mayor has pointed out some circumstances where there were cranes that were hanging over the Ocean Avenue and those things. This is something that came to us through some of the building trades and people who are obviously concerned because their folks are operating these kind of cranes and are on these work sites and have suggested to us that it might be a good approach to take. So other municipalities in Monmouth County have done it. I think there's probably about 30 in the state who have done it, and we're recommending it as just kind of a safety measure.
I think it's a very good recommendation because we have a lot of people that come in and they're not qualified to run these cranes. For them to get permits and stuff through us, through these ordinance, they have to be qualified. They have to be certified, that's a certified company, and I think that's a very good thing we should do.
Correct, and all we're doing here is collecting paperwork. So if you're gonna be out there, you're gonna have a crane on the job, you're gonna have to prove to us that you have all, because they're all licensed by the state. So, and sometimes in these accidents, you don't know that there's somebody out there that's operating it without the correct license until something wrong.
Okay. Thank you. And the next item is review of regular meeting agenda. Does anyone have any questions?
No.
No question.
Okay. I need a motion to close and go into executive session.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Dangler?
Yes.
Mr. Viera?
Yes.
Dr. Vogt?
Yes.
Dr. Sully?
Yes.
Mrs. Weathers?
Yes.
We got 10 minutes. We got 10 minutes.
I got it.
Bye, Lon.
5 minutes. We're still in the slide.